We're recording now.
Okay, so here I go.
Here we go.
Where did you get this?
Okay, so I will announce, hi everyone, welcome to the next episode or the newest episode of Trading Scores. And what Dan, the newly liberated Dan has just watched is the
man.
new intro to the show, which I'm sure all of you have watched as well. So
Jordan, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, good. It's been a work in progress for about 2 weeks, and my good friend Mason made it. So I also have to plug Mason. He wanted to start doing a live streamed 3D modeling thing.
Okay.
So everything that you saw on the saxophone, he 3D modeled. He made everything. If you zoom in on the saxophone, you'll notice that the body of the saxophone the texture was taken off of a photograph of a banana. And there's a fly on there somewhere. But if you want to, if anyone's interested in 3D modeling or just hanging out with Mason, he will be doing these on Twitch. His Twitch username is 3 dumb, D-U-M-B, or just look at my mustache, dumb, Enchannel, 3Dimensional. It is a comedy 3D modeling stream. He'll be live Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings, twitch.tv/3Dimensional.
That's amazing, and I owe him a beer. Tell him I said terrific work. Who recorded? Where did the sounds come from? Did you make the sounds?
That was him. He was like, I'll just do some crappy MIDI saxophone," and I said, "Perfect."
Okay, tell him that was truly amazing. Well done. And also, while we're speaking of crappy MIDI saxophone, here's a random reference. I think we need to take every opportunity we can to rabbit trail. So,
sure.
Do you know the keyboard player Adam Benjamin from Nebot?
Yes, I do.
So he did an album called "It's a Standard World."
Great.
It's got like 50 tracks on it, and they're all standards that are in alphabetical order. And he recorded this entire album himself using nothing but a MIDI keyboard and the sounds that came preloaded into GarageBand in 2008 or something like that.
Good year.
So he was using there's moments where he uses like the MIDI, not MIDI, but whatever, the saxophone sound from it. And it's ridiculous, but the way he uses it just goes insane. So he starts taking the solo, and then he takes it like way, 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 way up there to the point where it's like infinitely higher than any saxophone player could ever play. And it's just like the silliest sound you'll ever hear in your life. And he does the same thing with like the slap bass sound.
Oh, good. That's always a good one.
It's like, it is by far one of the most ridiculous and creative albums that I know of. And I think you can stream it anywhere you want. It's Adam Benjamin's "It's a Standard World." So while we're listening to terrible MIDI saxophone sounds, that needed to be brought up. So back to you, great. Jordan.
Thanks, Dan. Well, hey, if this is your first time watching this, I guess it's a podcast, even though I always think of pod as being audio only, but it's still.
Is this not a vlog? I mean, what are we? What are we, Jordan? What am I to you?
I think you to me are a heart, or a good piece of my heart.
I feel the same way.
Well, thanks, Dan.
Define the relationship. We can go home now.
Okay, so I always think of a vlog as being something that, you're always, you always see, oh, my hands disappear because I'm in Carnegie Hall, but like you're holding the camera and you're like, here I am doing this thing. And there's a bunch of edits and sound effects and music. Yeah. And since this is so low budget, I guess it's just a podcast. I think that works fine.
Okay. We should, I've been hearing from a lot of people from different sources that are watching this are really into it. And I'm very thankful for that. If people are watching this, I guess, via YouTube, that's our current main outlet, and they want us to move it to like maybe an actual podcast format via, Apple Podcasts or, the others that I forget because I stopped podcasting 3 years ago. like, go ahead and say something in the comments, because, you know, if you guys are happy with it here, that's less work for us. Sweet. So, but yeah, so I guess today we are talking about performance anxiety. Yeah.
We are. That's why I have the Carnegie Hall background.
It's making me nervous.
I know, me too.
Man, how many balconies are there? I'm looking at your stuff. It's
1, 2, 3, 4, and then maybe a smaller one up here.
That's kind of hard to see. Yeah.
It is. Well,
That's a
I guess
nice
it is
hall.
in New York City, so it's narrow and always a little bit like, huh, I thought it would be a little bit bigger than this.
Yeah, I've never actually even been to Carnegie, so, or let alone played there. So
Mm-mm.
one
Nope.
day, one day. Yeah.
So, we need to mention that we were asked to cover performance anxiety by a student of mine.
Yeah.
His name is Caleb Bradley. And this is something that, being on this side of higher ed, you deal with way more than I think you would expect. At least I have, mostly dealing with my students and stuff. But Dan, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being nah, 10 being no, um, where's your performance anxiety level?
Okay, so it fluctuates. I would say that it is never lower than a 3.
Word up.
Yeah, so it's never lower than a 3. If it's a very casual performance, I would say that, like, it really does change based on environment and based on a number of other factors, which of course we're about to get into. But it is a regular performance. I would say my nerves are probably 3 to 4, somewhere around there. And then a lighter performance is down closer to 3. A stronger performance can get up closer to maybe I'd say a 7. But that happens rarely. And I mean, largely it's gotten better. And I guess that's one of the things that we're going to get to as well. Performance anxiety, first of all, everybody has it and you do too. So shut up. Yes, you do. And also, number 2, it does get better. It does not go away. Anybody who promises that it's going to go away completely is selling you something.
Yeah.
What will happen is you will get better at controlling the feelings that you're experiencing, and the feelings will diminish in certain ways. So whatever the discomfort that you're feeling, it will not magically disappear, I don't think. I think it can be transformed into something that is enjoyable. I think it can be transformed into something that is not inhibitive of what you're trying to do. I
Mm-hmm.
think you'll get better at controlling it, but I don't think you should look for it to go away completely. If you're looking for the answer that's going to make your nerves go away and you to be a complete free person up on stage, I think you're going to be disappointed, because I don't think that exists.
I don't think it does either. And I know that because I've been told by 2 students in the last year, well, I just want to get to a point, and they've said it directly to me, like, when you perform, how you don't have it. And I was like,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't. So, and then that baffles me because, again, regardless of age, everybody has it.
Yeah.
But then I think that it's like, well, then maybe I'm doing an okay job because I'm actively thinking about it, of suppressing it and not showing it. Because
Yeah.
where your baseline is about a 4, I'd say mine is as well.
Okay.
It's definitely situational. But yeah, it will never go away. And I think in a weird way, that's not meant to sound daunting, or like once you join a special club, then you get better at managing it. But I think it's almost like a sense of camaraderie in a way, or realizing that it doesn't go away. That's good to know. Now, how do we move forward from here, knowing it doesn't go away?
Yeah, my main thing is the truth is always comforting. Like, I know you don't want to hear this, but you're going to be you're going to be comforted, because I am telling you the truth here, and it's like it that's the end of it.
Yes.
Like, it's not going to get worse than what I'm about to tell you. So I don't mean to say, oh no, I don't mean you to despair that it's never going away. I mean for you to understand that, first of all, this is totally natural, and the fact that you're experiencing it does not exclude you from or set you in a separate class from other excellent performers. I think that I do expect that if you were on the level of a Hilary Hahn or, you know, a Claude DeLong that's performing multiple times a week and for all sorts of audiences, I think it starts changing, and I think it probably does diminish. Can I drop my big bombshell thing here?
Let's
Like
do
the
it.
big observation that I've got about this.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
there's a book that I read by a Christian counselor several years back. His name is Ed Welch, and the book is called Running Scared, and it is on fear writ large. So anxiety is a subcategory of that fear. And that's what anxiety and performance anxiety is, a subcategory of that. And the main observation that I took away from that book is that fear is directly connected to something that you love. You fear because you are afraid of losing something that you love or need, and you're afraid of not receiving something that you love or need. It's tied to, you know, the root of fear is the fear of losing something. And so you're telling yourself, I'm in danger, I'm vulnerable, I need something and I might not get it, I'm not in control here, and I need to be in control for this or that or the other. And so the big question for us as we're approaching this is, what is important here? What do we stand to lose? What is my heart or my mind or my emotions? What are they insisting that I need that I might not get? You know? And why is a performance in front of people different than playing for just myself, playing by myself? Why is performing for some people a different experience than performing for others? And who are the most intimidating people for me to play for, and why? And I mean, obviously you're going to come up with different answers for all these questions, but I think that if you're going, I mean, I think it's a very helpful line of questioning, because the deeper you go into this, the more you realize that, like, these people's opinion, or certain people's opinion, matter more to me than they really should.
Mm-hmm.
And that leaves you with a different problem. And I'm not going to start suggesting ways to not, you know, love that. You know, you got a false love in there where it's like, I really need not to be, I'll be honest with this is me, Dan. I need, when I perform, I need not to be just accepted, but I need to be worshiped. You know, I need people to, like, hear me and love my playing. And I'm going to be disappointed if people don't greet me afterwards with genuine shows of, wow, that was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. And, you know, them saying in the back of their head, this is my new favorite player, or I've never knew the music could be that way. My ego needs something that's that exalted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I get on stage, something within me has this ridiculous, childish, absurd demand that is going to that maybe I'm not going to get that. Maybe they're not going to be impressed by that. Maybe I've got this, like, they've got this opinion of me, but I'm going to play today and their opinion of me is going to go down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not suggesting that everybody's got that same thing, but I will suggest that you start asking yourself the questions of, what am I afraid of losing here? What am I afraid of not getting here? And that may help you understand yourself a little bit. And that may shine some light on the conflict that you're going through as you're, you know, as you're dealing with this.
Absolutely. And I think for me, whereas you, it's that part of the ego which could trigger it. For me, my biggest thing, which has been the most beneficial thing to realize and try to overcome, well, first of all, is being honest with yourself and knowing exactly what the root of the issue is. And for me, it was, you walk on stage or you go into a lesson or any performance, anywhere in between, and you compare yourself to a version of yourself that will never, ever exist. So I'm always performing, or I used to always perform and go, well, the Jordan that I wish existed has perfect intonation, breathes excellent, will never miss a note, has perfect technique, has a tone that people are like, oh, what a gorgeous tone. Like, yeah, right. I don't know if I don't know if many people have ever cried listening to a saxophone play. So, well, probably in the negative way, right? But like all of these completely unrealistic expectations that I'm putting on myself based on a version of myself that doesn't exist. You know, what is it? The go-to stereotype for your alter ego or your evil twin is a mustache, and maybe I subconsciously did it today.
You're
But like,
evil Jordan.
I
We're
know I'm
talking
evil.
to evil Jordan.
It's Jordan with an O-N at the very end. Jordan.
I was going to call him Jordash.
Jordan. Jordash.
Sorry.
Like the jeans, like the clothing brand from the early 90s.
Precisely.
Waiting for them to make a comeback. Bugle Boy did. Fila did. Let's go. But yeah, it's these weird expectations that we put on ourselves, literally comparatively to a fictitious person that will never exist, and realizing that the best version of you, and that's for everybody, that exists is the version that exists.
Okay,
So,
I'm gonna argue that actually. I'm gonna suggest that your ego does know, and I don't mean like your pride. I mean like your self-awareness. It knows what you're capable of, and therefore, like, and sure, there are some like, oh man, why can't I hit an altissimo double F? You know, I'm talking about like, I hit that F. I hit it yesterday. It sounded good. Why can't I play it right now? Or I'm not going to play it right now. Or what I'm talking about, like, you're capable, you know what you're capable of. And like, the standard that we set for ourselves is that, oh, well, if I'm capable of doing it at some point in some way, then all across the line, am I capable of playing the perfect intonation? Am I capable of a beautiful sound on this note and this note and this note? Everything, all the expectations are moved up to 10. It's like, because, yeah, and you're right, there is no player that's going to consistently do all those things. But the fact is that I've heard myself do each one of these 1,000 things well. And I mean perfectly satisfactorily well at some point. But now my demand for myself, which is completely unrealistic and completely insulting, is that you do all these things perfectly right now in front of all these people. Dance, monkey, dance.
yeah.
You know, it's so and again, it's like, I do think that examining these things is helpful, because then you realize, man, I wouldn't treat anybody like that. I wouldn't like, and you're a teacher and I'm a teacher, and most of the people that are even in undergrad are teaching other people. You wouldn't demand certain things. You wouldn't act like this towards a junior high kid that you're teaching. You wouldn't act like that. Like somebody walks off stage afterwards and you're like, what the hell was that? You know, that's not you wouldn't treat anybody this way.
Exactly.
Unrealistic and unfair for you to set standards that are just unattainable. And yet we automatically do, because we own us, so we can abuse us.
Yeah.
Not helpful in any way.
It's totally not helpful. So the one thing I've been doing, at least with that, there's two, is one, realizing that Jordash, whatever or whatever it is for you,
Evil Dan.
I was about to say Bugle Dan.
Bugle Dan. Okay, Bugle Dan. We've got Jordash and Bugle Dan. Yes, so Bugle Dan shows up.
And then realizing that that person you're in control of, you created that person, so you can get rid of them. And then two is, like you were saying, expecting to do everything perfectly every single solitary time, that we're not robots, and you need to give yourself permission to just perform, or equally permission to fail, or permission to play subpar. And what's nice about it is that some of my favorite performances in no way have ever, well, classically, have never been flawless. There's an element of vulnerability. There's an element of being a human, which I think a lot of classical performers can lose over time, because they are afraid to recognize, I'm allowed to fail and I'm allowed to sound like a person and sound like it's still a work in progress, because spoiler, it's always a work in progress.
Yeah. No, and we hold it so valuable because we think that every performance that I do right now is a make or break for my career. And that's not true. It's not true. Oh man, do you know who James Altucher is? Altucher runs a podcast. It's just the James Altucher podcast, and he's a crazy guy, and I love him. He's super excitable, and he interviews lots of like writers, authors, and performers, business people, just famous people. He's sort of the same circle of friends as like Tim Ferriss and
Oh.
Ramit Sethi and the rest of those guys. But like he's a terrible interviewer, and he's my favorite interviewer. He's terrible because he keeps interrupting people, and he's like, oh, that sounds great, what about this, what, give me an example of, and he'll like constantly interrupt people as they're saying, and so the end result is that the conversation goes like a mile a minute all over the place, and I love it, and it's so entertaining. But he said one of the things that he pointed out a while ago was that we have this feeling, creative types have a feeling that we are only as good as the last thing that we put out. So if you're writing a blog post and your blog post gets 10,000 views, and that's good for you, then you're going to be on cloud 9. And if the next one gets 3,000 views and that's bad for you, then you feel like a complete failure because it's the most recent thing.
Mm-hmm.
And with performers, your most recent performance is not a good tell of your worth. If you had a bad performance, it doesn't mean you're a bad musician. If you had a good performance, it doesn't mean you're a good musician. It's like, it's not an accurate litmus of where you are, but we tend to use it as such.
Yeah. So. And it's always very peculiar. Like, and I think that's why, a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into, curating an Instagram, curating a website, curating a this and that, because there you have much more control over your product. Or
I hate social media so much. It's everything about, okay, so social media of all types is just lies upon lies.
Yes.
And then in the middle of that, it's jealousy and vanity, and envy runs the entire machine. It's like you post something because you want people to applaud you, and other people, and I'm just talking about me, man. I'm talking about me. I mean, I'll see somebody, and I remember before I've got a Facebook, but it's like I shut it down for a while, and I only go in there to post important things. But like, I remember being really jealous of some guy who's he doesn't have the same career that I do, and it's like, and I'm like, I'm sitting over here on my the career equivalent of a Scrooge McDuck, like big giant vault of gold coins, and I'm like, I can't believe he got that gig. I want that gig for me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is awful. This is disgusting. And it's like, and so people will post something that makes them look good. It'll post something that makes it look like their kids never have any troubles. It'll post something that makes it look like their house is in great shape, that the cake that they just baked is perfect and caused them no effort. They pose a picture that they got no cellulite. It's lies. It's all lies. And starting to just post regularly on Instagram and getting okay with like just posting mistakes was like one of the most liberating things for me. My performance anxiety started going down after I got okay with just putting up mistakes. And it was a struggle. You had to fight through that, but it's, man, you are comparing yourself to everybody's best possible picture with all the makeup and all the auto-tune and all the everything. And that is just going to make everyone doubt themselves left and right. And no wonder we're all anxious, neurotic messes, because we see ourselves for the reality that we are. And then we see other people, but a completely curated, one-dimensional view of who they are.
Yep.
This isn't a fair fight. It's not a fair evaluation. You're stacking yourself up again. And it's Wizard of Oz stuff, man. It's not real.
You're absolutely right. And I think like that's one thing that, one of the downsides of social media is just we sort of subject ourselves to willingly live comparatively. But again, I think it's arguable, to almost fictitious people or things where it's, like I know that I've posted videos before of a tricky run or something else, but it took me an hour to get it. I'm not just setting up, no warming up, and then just going, whoop, and then playing the first movement of the bear for some reason 60 clicks over tempo. That's just
Yeah.
that's just not the thing. So
Yeah.
I think it's wise to realizing that you're sort of in control over how you view and perceive social media as well, because
Yeah.
it's only a hindrance when it comes to performance anxiety and comparing yourself.
Yeah, you got to watch your intake. You got to watch what you're consuming, because it's going to affect you, you know. And it's like, write this larger than just your performance anxiety. Your mental health is going to be drastically affected if you don't like guard what you
Mm-hmm.
take in and what you like. You assign meaning to like, oh, well, everybody else is this way. Um, Getting away from social media, can we talk about comparing ourselves to other people?
Yes, please.
Okay, so oh man, there's so many things about performance that are actually true about and good in preparation, but not true and not good in performance. So like, there's a good way to compare yourself to others and a bad way to compare yourself to others. A good way would be, you are a freshman at a high school and you look up to a senior who's in great shape. For me, Stacy Wilson. Stacy got to Indiana University when I was a junior, and she walked out and played Caprice en Forme de Valse for her first masterclass performance. She was a master's student, so she's 2 years older than I am, or thereabouts. And she just absolutely just killed it. I mean, it was great. It was great. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. And I remember seeing and talking to her, and there was just, there was a sense of relief there that she knew that she did well. And it's your first performance for a new studio and you got to prove yourself, right? And she did, and it was great. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I was like, and I've looked up to her ever since then. I really have. She's a great player and a good person. And it's like, I want to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to UMass for my first masterclass performance, I played the same piece. I played Caprice en Forme de Valse, and I was just like, I'm going to pull a Stacy Wilson, and it's going to be awesome. And but the thing is, when you're listening to other players, you're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that on saxophone. I didn't know the tone could sound like that. I didn't know you could actually play it lowly, that quietly. I didn't know that this was possible or that was possible. Oh, you're listening to your teacher and you're going, oh, it's got to sound like this, and I'm going to start to imitate. That's a good thing. Whenever you get to the place where you're like, I'm worthless because I don't have the same level of success as this other person does. Whenever you get to the place where it's not good enough until, I get the same praise that they do, or, fill in the blank here. You know what I'm talking about? We have to recognize ourselves, especially in the artistic realm. We have to recognize that we have individual strengths and that we are not at the same place. And yes, there are players that are better than I am, and there are players that are worse than I am overall. And I think people would even object to saying that. It's like, well, it's all different. And okay, sure. I don't know how healthy it is to just write it off. I mean, there are players that can do 9/10 of things better than I can do those things, but I'm at a different place. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have a career. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have success. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to give meaningful performances. It doesn't mean that I can't be satisfied. And we've got to redirect ourselves away. I mean, if you're just being driven by like a competitive mindset, you're going to be dissatisfied with almost every performance unless you end up winning. And then you're just gutting performance of everything except for the competitive nature. And that's not what we set out to do. Music isn't a competition,
No. And it's funny though, because there are certain things that we build competitions around performance.
Yeah.
Which
I have.
Exactly. But there's again, with most things, it's perfectly fine if you approach it from a healthy perspective, and if you leave it realizing that this was a very good learning experience or just a good experience overall, and you don't, I don't know, and you don't necessarily take the negative aspects out of performing or competing, because what you were saying, when you hear players or other musicians or other artists, and you're like, well, I'll never be able to do that or whatever else.
Mhm.
That was my very first NASA experience. It was a
Oh
national
man.
one.
Yeah.
Um, but then I quickly learned the last day there, I was thinking, why on earth am I going to come to a conference and listen to a bunch of stuff just to be bummed out? Why am I not realizing that this is a huge learning experience and that this is also a way for me to be re-inspired and learn more things and see educators teach and see performers play and meet people and network? And it's so much more. I mean, I would say it's quite literally not the point of NASA to go there and be discouraged by what you hear. The
Yeah, I
point
hope not.
is all the positives of it, everything that I was just saying, and I'm sure there are way more than what I said.
Yeah. And so we've got something where you can take, depending on your mindset, you can take an experience, NASA or a bad performance or listening to somebody else play. Depending on your maturity and your mindset, you can take that and do it and turn it into something that's positive, or you can turn it into something that's negative and harmful to yourself. Um, it doesn't do you any good to look down on other players. It doesn't do you any good to want to crush other players. You know,
Nope.
it doesn't do them any good. It doesn't do us good to foster a competitive environment. I mean, and I guess I mean just like socially.
Mhm.
Competition is good because it really does drive people to perform better and better. And the resulting just climate of the art that you're competing in does go up. The level of the art goes up. And so that's a good thing. But we've got to have some moderating influence so that it doesn't become everything that we do and all that we do. We need to get to the place where, it is like we've got to have like a mindset of an average performance
Mhm.
in which we're still enjoying our playing and not everything went perfectly, but we're still satisfied with it. We're happy about it. We're okay with it. Um, it's hard to do.
It is hard to do. And I think, you mentioning that we all need to be supportive of one another. I mean, quite literally, if you zoom out, being a competitive or a classical saxophonist
Mm-hmm.
really is a very weird thing to do. And it's very, like, it can be isolating at times if you make it isolating, but realizing that at the end of the day, we are all artists, but at our core, we are dorks. We are weirdos that we would want to do the exact same thing over and over and over and continue to practice and practice and practice, that it serves us no good to have any sense of malice or harmful competitiveness with other people,
Yeah.
because uh, pro tip or hint, celebrating, and this goes for every person on earth, but I think especially a lot of younger people maybe going to their first NASAs or first competitions or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
celebrating the successes of others does not diminish your own success, and it does not
Yeah.
mean
Thanks.
that you are less than because somebody else did something good, because literally you both exist in the same saxophone universe, if we're being that specific about it. But at the end of the day, you're both existing in two separate universes, completely and totally. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's it's silly to do.
I like the way that this happens, not all the time, but frequently. Like whenever you're in a quartet and you're really trying to be good at it, you will be in that quartet with other, let's say you're in an undergraduate studio, you'll be competing against some of those other players in order to get placements in the wind ensemble, or if you audition, you've got to play the one saxophone part in the orchestra or something like that. So there's a competition there. But when you're in a quartet, you really want every other member in that group to be as good as they possibly can, because
Mm-hmm.
their product is your product. And so it's that sort of rounds it off a little bit. It's helpful. I don't know. It's such a broad thing.
It really is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think we've covered a good amount with performance anxiety, but why don't we close out? What's your go-to trick or skill when you're performing? If you
I was gonna
if you
suggest,
could,
yeah,
oh, go
yeah.
if you could desert island, and this desert island for some reason you're subjected to give one performance a day to a group of audience members. What's your go-to? What's your back pocket?
I've actually got a bunch. Do we have enough time to sit on here for another 20 minutes?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool.
Well, then let me really quick. Bathroom break. I'm back.
Great. Can
Okay.
you can you play the intro one more time?
Yeah, sure. I'll put it in right now.
Okay.
Okay, great.
That was good. Can you do it one more time?
Sure, ready?
All right, I'm satisfied now. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about like practical things, like things that you can do
Yeah.
to we've pretty much talked about like just the ideas around it, like the big picture stuff. But so I've got like I teach a pedagogy class, which is just for saxophone majors, like performance majors, and one of the lessons is on performance anxiety. So I'm actually looking at my notes here for
Oh,
that
cool.
class. But yeah, so there's big picture ideas that I've got, performance practice, and then in the moment exercises. So there's stuff that you do like all the time. There's stuff that you do as you get ready for a performance, and then there's stuff that you do when you're literally practicing that very day. So big picture thoughts are in order to get better at performance anxiety, the first one is performing more, right? Like the more you perform, the less traumatic and different and strange it is. Oh my goodness, sorry, I busted something here.
Oh, hey, that's okay.
There it is. Okay, now I'm good. Never mind. Yeah, the no, I'm not good. Where am I? Where am I? Come back, come back.
Did your old MySpace just pop up?
Yes, it did. Yeah, no, I'm all right. I'm good. I just deleted half of my notes just spontaneously without. Sorry, going back. Performing more, right? The more you perform, the easier this gets, the more commonplace it is. Think about how frequently we practice versus how frequently we perform. Think about number of minutes. So we perform like what, 8%, 1% of our saxophone playing time is performance time, and the rest is practice or rehearsal or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
small number. If you increase it, then it's a more regular thing. Like the first day you have a new job, you go in, you're a little nervous, you want to do well. The 375th day you go in, you're like, I know what's going on today. This is more commonplace. It's more just familiarity. It doesn't breed contempt here, but it's just, it breeds a sense of competence and control, which reduces your sense of anxiety. Recognizing and acknowledging your fears is helpful. Engaging, simply dealing with this, like going to Bulletproof Musician or dealing with performance practice, podcasts, anything else that you can come up with that help out with these things. Just simply making it like people will get on stage and go, oh, you know what? I've never really thought about this before. It's like, yeah, the best of luck, you know,
Yeah.
but there's not much you can do at that point, you know.
Mhm.
Exercise is helpful.
Here we go.
Just getting your body, putting your body, your mind is connected to your body, you know. And so if your body physically is in good healthy shape, it's going to help your mind, it's going to help your emotions, it's going to help your moods. You can worry to the point that you make yourself physically sick, so it goes both directions, and you will do better if you are in good shape. So exercise is an excellent thing that's going to help you mentally when you go into that. So
That's one thing that I didn't realize, that there was such a huge connection between those two. I love to run. I love to be active. It's one of my
yeah,
favorite things, and it's nice because I realize that a lot of people joke that running is awful, and it's not great, but then it gets
yeah,
better, just like performing. But when I run, I'm able to that's where those are my like self office hours. That's where I focus and do all my
yeah.
thinking.
Oh
And
my
it's
goodness.
and
Yeah.
it's nice because when I'm in that, like, I guess it's almost like a meditative state, but like a mindful or an active
Yes.
meditating state, which is the same. I was doing hot yoga for a little bit, and that is all more, it's mostly wakeful and mindful meditating.
Yeah.
And I'm able to connect to that part of my brain when I'm performing because it's a physical activity, and I'm able to sort of zen out a little bit more. And that was all thanks to just getting into running more.
That's awesome. Yeah. Let's see. I've got mindfulness down here, prayer, meditation, just the ability to deal with your own thoughts. Americans are not good at that.
No.
You gotta know what's kicking around up here. You got to be aware. That was an invasive thought. That was nuts. Like that was unrealistic. That was rude of me.
Yeah.
Like those are. It's good to be aware of what you're thinking, because that's your, this is your background noise. These are the things that are playing on repeat. So be aware
Mhm.
of what's happening. Sleep. And this goes out to literally every one of my college students. You need to get more rest. You need sleep. You need to go to bed earlier than you do. You need to block out time during the day that you don't work and don't. I mean, it's common sense, but it's like you're not going to do well if you're constantly burnt out.
Mhm.
And we need to take care of our bodies. I mean, this is really, really really important. Are you familiar with the fear setting exercise by Tim Ferriss?
If that's the one where you practice in a kennel of angry canines, then yes. But if it's not, then no.
I need to look this up. He's got a mental practice where you regularly visualize the worst possible thing that could possibly happen. And I'm going to look this up, and I'll get back to you, because I don't, it sounds too simple. Like I was just looking at an article about it just a moment before we started recording, but it has to do with basically facing your worst possible fears and going, you know what? That's actually not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's like, if my fear is, first of all, that like if I get up on stage, what's my worst fear? I'm going to play badly, and then my pants are going to fall down, and then my underwear is going to catch fire, and then the stage is going to drop into a pit of molten lava while my family laughs at me. Okay, so the likelihood of that happening is pretty low.
Yes.
So maybe I'm afraid of something that literally isn't going to happen, but I don't think that that's his exercise. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to get back to you.
Sure.
Okay, keeping going on. And then last thing, big picture thing, is to practice past the point of maximum competency. So you need to be aware that whenever you're performing, like this is your ability, like this is how great you could possibly be, you're going to play right there. And so what you want to do is constantly be practicing to the point that your performance is going to be like a moderate performance is still going to be masterful of the thing that you're going to perform. It's still going to be good enough. Like your technical ability is raised to the point that the demands of the music that you're playing are not beyond what you're able to take. Like you're able to, like if I were going to sit down and play a barrio sequenza or something like that the technical demand on that would be definitely at the level where I could maybe handle, and maybe a little bit beyond what I could physically handle. So I need to practice to the place where playing the barrio is relatively easy. So it needs to be there. So those are my big picture ones. As far as performance practice is concerned, we need to actually practice performing. We need to practice. There's a difference between practicing and practice performing. My favorite example of this is like when you mess up in a practice setting, you go back and you fix it. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to keep going and making mistakes and keep going. You're supposed to go back and fix the mistakes until you can play through them without mistakes. In a performance setting, you can't do that. And so if you're used to psychologically, oh, that's a mistake, let me go back and fix it. Then when you get into a performance setting, your brain goes, I can't go back. Oh no, it's there forever. What am I going to do? And you're just not used to dealing with this. So you can physically and in a real way practice performing so that when you perform, it doesn't feel so different.
Yeah.
Record yourself, practice doing run-throughs, and when I say do a run-through, I don't mean get a few bars in, go, that wasn't good enough, let me go back in. That means I'm going to start at the beginning and it's going to be a hot mess and I'm going to get to the end. Part of these skills, like there's a performance skill, which is to recover from mistakes. And you can't ever practice that skill unless you're actually making mistakes and trying to recover from them. If you make a mistake, stop, and then go back, you never get the chance to practice the recovery skill. And so you need to practice doing run-throughs, and you need to get a bunch of bad run-throughs in. so that you're used to how to recover from a mistake and move forward in those things.
Yeah, and that's something that I am actively teaching in all of my lessons. It's two types of practicing: is when you're targeting a section, work it, work it, work it, work it, and then contextualize before and after. But
Yeah.
then there's another type of or another type of practicing. Even if you're not doing a full run through, play through a larger section contextualized, and then play through mistakes and quickly recover as
Yeah.
quickly as you can. So like, a lot of my students, I'm realizing now, have this thing where they're never really looking ahead, or they're always looking at the exact same note that they're playing. But in a way, you need to be sort of working ahead, and it's a learned thing for sure.
Okay, so band directors that are listening to this, pay close attention to what I'm about to say here, because this is something I think that's a blind spot for band directors. Remember that when you're performing something, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So you might have had section A rehearsed really well in the group. Section B is really good too. And section C is also really good. But then when you try to play it all together, it starts to fall apart. There's a mental exhaustion that kicks in, and people are not going to be able to play section C as well at the end of a full run through as they can if you're just working on section C. So part of it is doing these run throughs. And again, after you've done the contextualization exercise, when you're starting to do larger things, you need to spend several days, weeks, who knows how long, actually being used to playing through things, because there is a level of mental and physical exhaustion that kicks in. And when we're practicing, we need to get good at these, because when you perform, if your body and mind are not capable of handling this run through or this entire recital, Tim McAllister was on here and talking about like that story where he programmed way too much music and his face just gave out,
Yeah.
It's what's going to go on in the back of your head when you start realizing that things are going south. You can prepare for a good performance by preparing for the performance itself. Okay. Oh, exercise and then directly going into run throughs. This one's fun. So do a bunch of push-ups or run around the building a few times and then grab the horn and just play. What that's doing is it's simulating a elevated heart rate and a higher oxygen consumption. So your breathing and your heart rate are going to be more similar to the state that they will be when you're performing. I haven't used that much, but my students have, and a lot of them swear by it. They really like doing that because it gets them ready. And, if you're really getting the heart rate up, it's not going to be up that high when you walk out on stage. Hopefully.
Yeah,
So,
true.
using your imagination to transport into performance scenario. I like this one a lot. I use this one with my students. So what you do is you close your eyes and you take 60 seconds to imagine the performance setting. So I've got students that are going for region band, high school region band, the all-state process. So I say, okay, close your eyes. And then I need you to imagine the following things. You are there. Your stand is in front of you. Imagine how far away it is. The chairs are behind you. The students that are in the room are back behind you. You've got that curtain in front of you and the judges are behind. You've seen some of these judges before. You haven't seen some of them. There are some students in the room that are your friends. There are some that you've never met before. There are some that you heard play and they make you nervous. Fleshing out all the details. Maybe you played earlier today. Maybe you haven't. Your face feels this way. Your heart rate feels this way. You're imagining yourself into the room. And then 60 seconds in, you open your eyes and you start playing. Almost always, if you're doing this exercise properly, you'll get a little nervous. And then you can practice being nervous and trying to play through things when you're nervous. We get used to these situations. You adapt to them. You have to place yourself in the scenarios. And so, and the flip side of that is when you're in performance setting, close your eyes for a couple of seconds and imagine that you're back in your bedroom practicing or in a practice room practicing, and try to mentally get yourself out of the situation. Imagination is really powerful. Playing for others, playing for your friends, playing for your family, playing for your enemies, just playing for people, setting up a bunch of, stuffed animals on your bed so they stare at you with their beady little eyes. It's different. Playing in front of a mirror, it's like it's a curveball and you can't stop. You have to keep going. And so it's a matter of just getting yourself used to the performance. Especially as it gets closer to performance time, you need to spend a good amount of your practice time doing these things to mentally and physically prepare yourself to go on stage. A lot of times people don't do any of this at all. Like
Yeah.
they're still spot checking. They're jumping from thing to thing, and maybe they'll do a run through here or there, but they're not engaging with the psychological portion of it. And you got to realize that that's 3 weeks of prep that you have that you can get in there, just really get some good ideas and just get your mind used to doing it. So there's that. And then I have the in the moment exercises. So
Yes.
um, I was backstage with Claude DeLong in Singapore 10 years ago. I don't know how long. It was a while back. And I was like, and I just had the really terrible performance of Jungle that I think I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Maestro, what do you do when you get nervous on stage? He goes, oh, when I perform, I am always very relaxed. I could take a nap. It is very loose and it's very controlled. And I could take a nap. And I'm like, that's great. But that is not what I asked.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, well, and there's an exercise, a breathing exercise that before you walk on stage. It's the yoga exercise. You basically breathe in and then you breathe out gradually for 8 counts. Breathe in again, breathe out for 9 counts. Breathe in, breathe out for 10 counts. Breathe in, breathe out for 11, 12, 13. You get up to 30. And when you're going, yeah, normally I'll do it about at this speed, whatever that is. You know, when you have to go out for 25 counts, that really slows your breathing down because you have to budget your air, and it slows your heart rate down as a result. Extremely helpful.
Yep. That's one that I think a lot of people sleep on because they feel silly doing it. But I mean, you're quite literally forcing yourself to, again, do a little bit of mindful meditating.
Yeah.
With taking in a bunch of oxygen, expelling a bunch of oxygen or whatever.
Yeah.
It works. It works more than if you don't do it.
Yeah, right.
I like
exactly.
That
one. Yeah. You can, whenever I'm performing, I'm always focusing on relaxing my body. Like I'm pooling tension in different places, my shoulders, my arms, my legs. I'm making sure my knees aren't locked and making sure my weight's on the balls of my feet. I'm constantly thinking about keeping the body relaxed because if tension starts pooling in my body, it's going to pool in my brain as well. And then I'm always focused on getting air out of my body. So breathe in, get it out, get it out, get it out, play, 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 breathe in, go play, 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 play. I'm focusing on 2 things, phrasing and getting the air out of my body. Like those are the 2 things that I do when I'm actually practicing. And then you can have preset controls too. You can write into your music, you're nervous now, relax yourself. Take a deep breath here. You know, this is 20 bars of rest. Get rid of all the air, relax your lips, whatever. Just have a few things that say, okay, I know when I'm going to get nervous, I'm going to have to remind myself to unclench my jaw. I'm going to have to remind myself to shake off my wrists or whatever. Whenever I feel myself in this scenario, I'm telling myself this before I perform. Whenever I get myself into a state where I'm really agitated, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Or maybe it's just one thing. I'm just going to deep breath. And so when you're performing, you're like, here I am. Here's the state. What's the trigger? Okay, there it is. What do? I do this. So you have preset controls that allow you to regain a little bit of it. And then the last one is, of course, beta blockers. Works for some people. Works for my wife. She's a violinist. It's never really worked for me. So bananas or whatever it is, they haven't really had much effect on me. I do like eating. I like having a relatively full stomach before I perform, and that's really weird. Most people like a completely empty stomach. I get a lot of butterflies if I've got an empty stomach. If my stomach has something to do, no space for butterflies. So that's how I do it.
The one, like with beta blockers and stuff, that typically goes out of something that I would normally do. So the one thing I do before a performance is I just try to have, like, if you could visualize, like, what's like a really good relaxing day for you to have. I try to just do that, especially if it's something that is, like, if it's a larger performance, maybe I'll go for a longer run. Maybe I'll have one more cup of coffee. I know a lot of people stay away from caffeine, but I just try not to do anything different, because then if I create this ritual around performing, then at least for me, it makes it seem like a bigger deal than it needs to be. And I like to be as relaxed as possible and take it as casually as I can.
That's good.
My one in the moment thing is doing the internal shrug. When you're playing and then you reach a point where you mess up, just inside either shrug or just say, "Who cares?" and then just keep
Oh,
going
it's good. Yeah. Yeah,
because
that's
it's
good. That's like it allows you to just let it go instead of just going, oh, that was a mistake. And it's like 9 bars later. And you're like, do you remember that mistake you made? And it's
exactly.
like, not helpful, man.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the one thing that I like a lot that you mentioned is giving yourself cues in your music when you know you're going to be fatigued, when you know something's going to be happening. Even coming up with shorthand, like I don't know, like initials or a little symbol for something else that means something to you. The one thing I would avoid in your music is there was what was it? Someone was playing something for a jury and they sent in a PDF of their music and it said relax at the top with exclamation marks. I
Hmm.
don't think someone saying relax and yelling at you is going to make you relax.
Hmm.
So how about avoid exclamation marks in your music as well, because you're going to read it as it's written. So
Yeah.
just
That's just an outworking of somebody's inner dialogue there. It's like, is your inner dialogue you comforting yourself and reminding yourself, hey, it's okay, you can relax? Or is your inner dialogue like a screaming Gestapo?
exactly.
It's yeah, man, maybe take it easier on yourself. See how that works for a little bit. Yeah.
I
I guess
agree.
my last piece of advice is that like that inner voice that is critical and points out things that are wrong when you're practicing, going, oh, that wasn't quite right. Okay, that was wrong. That attack didn't work quite the way you wanted it to. A little out of tune there. The critical, like your ability to critique, that voice there, whenever you go into performance, it goes on meth. I mean, it just
Yeah.
goes out the I mean, it is out of its mind,
Hmm.
and it gets super loud, and it's not even accurate. And you'll go back later and you go like, oh yeah, I remember I messed this one thing up massively. And you're like, wait, wasn't it here? I didn't even hear. Oh, is that little blip? And things will, like, you'll attack something and you'll mean to attack it with an accent that comes out in this particular way, but it comes out in this other particular way instead. And your brain goes, that was wrong. And it wasn't that it was wrong. It was just not exactly what you intended to do. Still the right note, still the right rhythm, still in tune, still good tone, just not what you intended. Your brain at that point, all hopped up on adrenaline, is like not capable of determining how big of a deal something is. And so you have to tell yourself, I can't trust me right now.
Yeah.
I have to perform. I have to perform, and I've got to trust that it's going to be okay. And then I'll listen to my friends afterwards, and if they're honest with me, like, yeah, this was a little rough. You probably should have prepped that better. Okay, fine. But you go back and listen to a recording of yourself playing 6 months later, and not next week. Please don't play and then listen to a recording of your recital like the next day.
No.
Like, because you'll still remember all those things. You'd be like, this was where the mistake was. Yeah, there it is. It's right there. I'm a terrible person. It's like, that's not helpful to anybody. It's
No.
listen 6 months later when you've forgotten the details, and listen to it objectively, and you're like, this is not bad. This is not bad. I was
And
all
then
worked up.
learn how to act. If you get out of a performance, whether it's one piece, a full recital, it doesn't matter, and someone comes up to you and you're not happy with how you performed, and
Yeah,
people
right.
approach you and they say, great job, do not tell them, nah, it really wasn't, because then you're telling them that they're wrong.
Mhm.
And nobody, when they give a compliment like, hey Dan, I like your shirt, you don't actually. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Okay. I thought
Yeah.
I did. That's weird. I
Yeah.
guess I don't know I guess I don't know what
Yeah.
my thoughts are.
Take the compliment. And if somebody really enjoyed it, really take that compliment. You
Mm-hmm.
know, let that matter to you. If somebody enjoyed it, let that matter to you. Don't be
Yep.
so critical that you can't enjoy. It's like you can have, all these nice things. And if you don't have the attitude to enjoy them, then what good are they? If you have a decent performance and it really is decent and the whole audience loved it to death and you didn't, I mean, again, it's a mindset thing. You have the ability to enjoy what you just did or not. That is within your control. So hang on to that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I ran us over by a good amount of time. So
Oh, that's
sorry,
okay.
but that was that I enjoyed talking about that.
Me
I actually do
too.
have one more thing, but we'll have to talk about it later. And that is the Jeff Cooper color code system. We'll talk about that some other time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm stoked for it already.
Yeah.
Um, well, Dan, as always, good discussion, good talk.
Yeah, man.
Um, I'm glad you like the intro.
I very
And
much do. Yeah.
and I will put if anyone's interested in doing some 3D mapping or like following along a live stream where a very good friend of mine does 3D mapping and is funny inherently. I'll put the stuff below as well in the description. But we're not going to say the 3 cursed words that people always say on YouTube videos. We're just going to say, what are we going to say? Instead of the words, you know which ones I mean.
I know. I don't. You're putting me on the spot here. I want to say something like "reach out and say hi."
There we go.
We don't bite. We're not mean. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. That works for me. Okay, Dan, farewell.
Right. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you, and everyone else. See you later.